All right. Okay. If I unmute my microphone, I guess y'all will be able to hear me. So I'm going to start all over again and say, welcome to our show, Let Us Reason Together. And again, I am your second day of the week host for Let Us Reason Together. My name is John Craig, and it's based off of Isaiah 118. Come now and let us reason together, says Yahweh. Though your sins are as scarlet, they will be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they will be like wool. This is where we sit down, reason out current events, cultural shifts, and of course, this week's Torah portion. We can either push back or push through. Nevertheless, if iron does not sharpen iron, sparks will never fly, let alone ever get a fire going. And without a little heat and a good midrash, how will our hearts ever get soft and moldable enough to be transformed in the way that the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, wants us to be? Let alone, shall we say, put a little fire under our tail. So maybe we need to take some action on some things. So today is Monday, March 18th, 2019. It is the 11th day of the 13th month of Adar 2 here in the Hebrew year 5779. And want to just say hello to everyone that's watching now on YouTube and those that are live in the chat room. Good morning. And we welcome your participation in the chat room there. Love to see that and see your comments as you're going along. And also, I want to say, hey, give us a thumbs up and share this link on your social media, email, however you want to send it out. Let people know so they can connect with some of the things we'll be talking about today, the Torah portion, the Haftarah portion, and a current event item that I think is affecting everybody's life. We want to talk about all those. Today is, by the way, besides the 18th of March or the 11th day of the second month of Adar, today is Being Sad Listening to Your Favorite Songs Day. What? Yeah, that's what the world wants to do. They want to be sad listening to your favorite songs. So maybe I'll throw out a song, besides a whole bunch of praise and worship songs that I really like. But how about this old secular song from the 90s? Don't worry, be happy. All right. So that way you won't get too sad listening to some of your favorite songs. But also it's spending stashed cash in your favorite restaurant day. Yes, favorite restaurant. I can think of a favorite restaurant I'd like to be in. Just need the stash cash to do that. And it's also thanking neighbors with unpassworded Wi-Fi day. Thanking neighbors with unpassworded Wi-Fi day. So if you're just connecting with to the internet with your neighbor's Wi-Fi, you just go over and say, hey, thank you for not putting a password on your Wi-Fi. About greeting strangers in the streets day. I think that's probably a good thing to do, is to greet some strangers in the streets, wherever you're going. Just say, you know what a smile does, and a good hello, hey, how are you? You know what that can do in just connecting with people? It's amazing what that does in connecting, and maybe it might break down some barriers and create a relationship that you can talk about Yeshua with. And it's emptying your fridge before bed day. Now, so today, before you go to bed, empty your fridge. Midnight snack maybe, or maybe get some of that old stuff that's kind of turning different colors out of the fridge. How about this? Now that we talked about being sad listening to your favorite songs day, how about this one? Act happy day. So they don't know. I think they're just a little schizophrenic on this. They don't know if they want to be sad or if they want to act happy. So act happy day. And by the way, it's contagious. It's awkward moments day. I think it's really awkward probably if you're having a problem between bouncing back and forth, being sad and being happy. So that's kind of awkward. But think about awkward moments. Let's try to avoid those today. It's kind of weird. How about forgive mom and dad day? So many people hold on to stuff in your past. Forgive. That's all I can say about this. Here's something that the world is observing, and it's observed annually on March 18th. It's Goddess of Fertility Day. Well, you know what? I'm not celebrating that. And then it makes me think, well, yeah, right now it makes sense because we're in the time of Lent. And if you remember what the time of Lent was, it's the mourning for Tammuz. And that's why people fast during that time. Whew, come on, folks. We don't do that stuff because we're going back to the Hebraic roots of our faith. And so anyway, we got to turn that one off. All right. So it is also National Biodiesel Day. Tell you why, because on this day in history, somebody's birthday is being celebrated. So National Biodiesel Day. It's amazing how you can make diesel and you can not have to drill for it. Going on, National Lacy Oatmeal Cookie Day. It's National Sloppy Joe Day. Thinking about manwiches right now. And National Welderly Day. Now, what is National Welderly Day? Well, Dr. Dale Anderson created National Welderly Day along with Act Happy Day in an effort to promote the health benefits of happiness, humor, and laughter. And especially as we age, that's what keeps us healthy. So Dr. Anderson suggested that one should start each day by standing in front of a mirror and letting out a huge belly laugh. Well, sometimes if you look at a huge belly, you might be laughing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm right. All right. We're moving on. Okay. And it's Supreme Sacrifice Day. Supreme Sacrifice Day is celebrated. Here's some things to be observed this week. Besides a Welderly Day, it's Welderly Week. American Chocolate Week. Hey, that's connected to this day in history. It's Clutter Awareness Week. International Goof Off Week. Now that seems like something to do. National Goof Off Week, except make sure you don't goof off too much at work. You got to get your work done. Okay. And then Jobs for Teens Week. It's National Anonymous Giving Week, National Bubble Week, National Clean Out Your Closet Week, and National Introverts Week. So, and one last thing, National Poison Prevention Week. And one other thing for all of those that are in the peanut gallery right now that are watching, it's National Peanut Month. Dun, dun, dun. And I think last week we talked about that dynamite is uses peanuts in part of its ingredients. Just something to think about there. Okay, daily quotes for Monday, March 18th, 2019. Positive quote of the day. Circumstances don't defeat you. You defeat yourself when you give up. And that's from Jonathan Lockwood Huey. So don't give up. Ever get in the middle of a project and say, I just can't get it done. I'm just not going to do it. And then, no, don't do that. You say, I got to get this thing done. I don't care what I feel. I am going to do this and accomplish this goal. The enemy is such a liar. Funny quote of the day. And this is, New Yorkers love it when you spill your guts out there. Spill your guts at Wimbledon and they make you stop and clean it up. All right. That was from Jimmy Carter. Whatever, Jimmy. Okay. And then love quote of the day. Love begins with a smile, grows with a kiss, and ends up with a teardrop. And that was from Anonymous. Verse of the day taken from the Haftarah portion, Jeremiah 7:23. But this is what I commanded them, saying, obey my voice, and I'll be your God. And you will be my people. And you will walk in all the way which I command you, that it may be well with you. Isn't that great from a loving God? He wants everything to be well with us. And so we want to hear his voice, hearken to his voice. Shema, hear, listen, do, obey, command, guard, protect. And then he will be our Elohim. And we will be his people. I love that. Great verse, Jeremiah 7:23. What happened on this day in history? Well, in 1673, Lord Berkeley sells his half of New Jersey. Yep, Lord Berkeley had half of New Jersey. And who did he sell it to? He sold it to the Quakers, and who have quite a place in American history. In fact, it was President Nixon who had a Quaker heritage. Also, in 1881, Barnum and Bailey's first combined greatest show on earth opens in Madison Square Garden. In 1911, North Dakota enacts, this is something that I thought was interesting, being that I work in insurance claims. North Dakota enacts a hail insurance law. So that was kind of interesting. 1911. 1931. For those of you that are shaving with electric shavers, you might be interested in this. Or maybe if you don't shave any longer, but might be interesting. First electric shaver goes on sale in the United States. And who made the first electric shaver? Schick. And then in 1940, Benito Mussolini and Italy joined Hitler in Germany's war against France and Britain. And in 1965, cosmonaut, let's not be dyslexic about that, Alexei Leonov, leaving his spacecraft, the Voskhod 2, for 12 minutes, becomes the first person to walk in space. Guess what? In 1965, I was alive for that one. Yeah, Sandy, don't say it. Don't have to say it. Yeah, you look like you're alive back then. don't let the gray in the beard give it away, or the hairline. Okay, all right, just making a joke. Going on, 1966. Get this, women. In 1966, you could have bought a dress for $1. What type of dress? Well, it was from Scott Paper Company. They began selling paper dresses for $1 in 1966. Can you imagine? Don't want to get out in the rain in a paper dress. And then in 2018, Vladimir Putin is elected to a new 6-year term as Russian president with 76% of the vote. It is his 4th term. You know, his election last year in America really was completely missed in the press. I didn't see much about it. And so birthdays being celebrated today, 1837, Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th U.S. president. He was born in Caldwell, New Jersey, and he passed away in 1908. And let's see, in 1858, Rudolf Diesel. Yep, remember about Biodiesel Day? Well, Rudolf Diesel, he was the inventor of the diesel engine. And he was born in Paris, France. French-born German engineer, invented the diesel, born in Paris, France. Huh, interesting. So he was a German, born in Paris. But nevertheless, that's why we're probably thinking about Biodiesel Day. And in 1869, Neville Chamberlain, British Prime Minister. He was born in Birmingham, England. And remember him? He was the one that was trying to make all those deals with Nazi Germany, which just allowed Nazi Germany to continue to increase in power and ultimately go to war against England. So, and he passed away. He did pass away, but he was Prime Minister from 1937 to 1940. So joining me here shortly will be my wife, Sandi Craig, and also joining with me shortly will be Mr. James Meyers. So I'm excited about that. So I will introduce them again when they join me here on the show. Also, on the lighter side of things, I just want to talk about some things, some wit for the day, untwisting of our brains, and some points to ponder. Well, we've been talking about food and diet trivia. I'm going to continue with this list this week. And so our first one, last week, we talked about 500 million snails that are eaten in France every year. Well, how about this? Approximately 1 billion snails are served in restaurants annually. Yeah, that's worldwide. Ugh. Okay. And then over 90% of all fish caught are caught in the northern hemisphere. Think about that. Do they not fish in the southern hemisphere, or do they not have a lot of fish in the southern hemisphere, or they're just the big fish eaters in the northern hemisphere? I don't know, but 90% of all fish caught are caught in the northern hemisphere. 75% of fish caught are eaten. The rest is used to make things such as glue, soap, margarine, and fertilizer. So, and then over the last 40 years, food production actually increased faster than population. Oh, we've got that. Let me see if I can change our angle again.
No, don't change it like that. Move it that way.
Yeah, we got the sun is at an angle right now. And I didn't realize I wasn't looking at our picture here. Wow. I don't know. We can adjust our light to get that sunlight out of there. I really have to adjust our angle. So I apologize for the view right now. It's coming in through that window. So also going, I'm having a conversation with Sandi, who's about ready to join me here in our. Okay, so now we're making adjustments here at our angles so I can get my wife to join me here on the couch. And there she is. Good morning, Miss Sandi Craig.
That's just weird that the sunlight makes the screen blue.
I know, it is kind of weird. Maybe that's a little bit better. All right. So how are you? Are you alive? Well,
good. I'm glad I looked at the picture.
Yeah. Are you staying away from the snails today?
Yeah.
It's like one of those things. Have you stopped eating snails?
Have you stopped eating alligator? Have you stopped eating? Yeah, like we ever did.
Like we ever did, right? So anyway, there we go. So, but do you like the fish that are caught in the northern hemisphere, right?
I love fish.
I know.
To eat them anyway.
You do. All right. So over the last 40 years, get this, over the last 40 years, think of 40 years, food production annually increased faster than the population. Think about that. So if it's increasing like that, what is the solution to world hunger? Maybe it has to do with distribution. Maybe so. How about the average person eats almost, anybody want to guess? How much food in a year does the average person eat? How about this? 1,500 pounds in a year. And of all you carrot lovers out there, carrots have 0 fat content. And where were the first carrots cultivated? They were cultivated in Afghanistan in the 7th century. And listen to this. They started with yellow flesh and a purple exterior. Isn't that something? Makes you kind of wonder about why are they orange now? And the last thing I want to say is, how about chocolate? Anybody like chocolate? Well, did you know that chocolate is the #1 foodstuff flavor in the world, beating both vanilla and banana? So there we go. That's what we've got right now. And so we are about ready to jump into our next category, which has to do with,
that helped a little
with
bit.
the Torah portion. Are you ready to bring the Torah portion?
No. I guess I will be. Did that help a little bit?
It helped a little. Yeah, it actually helped a lot.
Oh.
So you did.
Sorry,
good.
I had to go cover up windows.
Yeah. And that nice.
We got to remember that while the sun is in that position at this right now.
During this time. That's right. We need to do, it'll shift.
Okay. If I'm going to do the Torah portion, you need to move your hand. Why don't we do the news? Oh, because you want James here for the news.
Yeah, I want James here for the news.
I'm serious. You'll need to move that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. So for the Torah portion today, I wasn't prepared yet, but in season and out, right?
That's right.
Okay. I thought we would talk about the 2 altars that we see in the tabernacle. Okay. 2 altars. Why are there 2 altars? Well, if there's something we learned last week, and I talked about it not only here, but I talked about it at Life of Worship as well, is that when you examine the word, you are the offering. In fact, it even says that when you put you on the altar, basically. So if you're the offering, you're the one to lay yourself on the altar. So maybe what does it all have to do with everything? Because we also have the position of priests and kings. So let's unpeel some layers a little bit and look. Since there's 2 altars, how does that what are we represented in that? Well, we are represented in both ways, because there's one in the where's the first altar? It's in the outer court. And there's an inner court. So maybe the altars represent our flesh that we see, the things we see in us on the outside, and the altar of incense is what is within us. Maybe both of those things are represented in the two altars. And I'll say, in fact, I believe they are actually. So what happens on those altars? Well, we've got to remember how what causes things to burn, or even the incense to burn? It's fire. Fire is what causes everything to burn. 2 Timothy 1:6-7 says, therefore I remind you to stir up the gift of God, gift of Yah, which is in you by the laying on of hands, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind. We quote that a lot, but it talks about stirring up the gift. Stir up the gift. What does that mean? Well, we're going to look at that in just a minute, but we've got to remember that what's the priesthood's position when it comes to the altar? Well, the priests are the ones that they put the wood out and bring the coals to make it burn. But who is the one that brings the fire? It's Yah. Yah brings the initial fire. Now we need to keep it stirred up. We need to keep it stoked. We can't let it die. We are the ones that do that. We tend the fire, but we, as the royal priesthood, we lay our flesh on that altar, just as the animal's flesh is laid on there. We are to lay that flesh on our altar so that what remains is something pure and something good. The chaff is all burned away. Everything is burned away, and it's the pure essence of the ash that's left. What is supposed to be within us, because our flesh is laid on that altar so that we can go into that inner court, so we can go to that altar of incense. And what happens at that altar? Well, that's what is dealing with the inside of us. What are the thoughts and the plans on the inside of us? But it all starts at the outer court, on the altar in the outer court. And we've got to remember that. So why was the flesh of the animal? It's used for all sorts of purposes. But is it the priests that do the killing? No. It's the offerer does the killing. We see that in chapter 8. It's the one who brings the sacrifice that does the killing. So what does that mean? We ourselves are the ones that are to lay our flesh down there. We don't wait. I've heard some people, Father, do this. And Yah does do those works in us. But he's also not going to, if we're not going to participate in it, he's not going to go against our will. We have to be participants in the offering. We have to be participants in that offering. We don't acknowledge to put forth effort. We're told to come to the altar and put our flesh on it. Yeshua expects us to do exactly what he did. What did he do? He put his flesh on the altar. He was the sacrifice. Well, haven't you heard that we're supposed to bear our crosses as well? Now, let's move to the altar of incense, which is on the inside of us. Really, that's our motivation and intents of the heart. And that's where it can get really difficult, because why do we do what we do? Do we do it because we want something from him, or do we do it because we love him? Now, we've talked before about worship and prayer are what goes up on that altar of incense, that thing that draws us near him, that he is drawn, that we get to have that intimacy with him through our prayers, through our worship. And that's absolutely true. But the prayers, the way we even pray determines the motivation of our heart. Why do we do what we do? What are the intents of our heart? Because in our life, we're dealing with two altars, one that represents our flesh, and the other, the hidden secrets, those things hidden within us, maybe that we don't even think anybody knows. It's the intentions of our heart. We can look good on the outside. We can do all sorts of things for Yah on the outside, but if it's not, if the motivation isn't pure, then for what's the point? What's the point? Because you can be sinning internally and nobody else knows. Anger, dealing with secret sin, all these things, because the outside may look good, but it's a two-step process. It's a two-step process that we need to lay ourselves on the altar. We need to burn up what shouldn't be there. We need to be willing to be burned. But here's the next thing. We've got to keep the fire going. Well, how do we do that? I think we do it in part, number one, by being in his word and having that relationship, by following his commands, by realizing that it's done out of love. It's done out of love, but also we've got to think back of all that he's done. People, if you are living and breathing today, you should be praising him. Yeah, the circumstances around you may not be good, but you know what? You have the word that will sustain you. You stir up that fire by remembering what he's done for others. Remember what he's done for you. Read that word. Read the Psalms. Read the word. Go back and see through our patriarchs how he's brought them from the places where victory might not even seem theirs, but he's brought it forth in miraculous ways through the prophets, through testimony. And that is what we hold on to. We stoke the fire with that. We stoke the fire with our worship. We stoke the fire through the reading of his word. You know what? By telling others about him, by getting our eyes off ourselves. So on the two altars that are before us, are we willing to literally, just as we are that sacrifice that we learned that last week, are we really willing to lay both our flesh on the altar in the outer court, and our inner intents of our heart, our thoughts on that altar of incense, and in the midst of it, give him worship and praise?
Amen. And we're being joined by James Meyer right now. And so, but you know what, Sandy, I think that's really good. I was just thinking about that fire, and I was looking up at one of the margin notes that I had written in my Bible. One of the things that I like having a paper Bible is because I like my little notes that I write over the years. I put notes, and I like having margins big enough to write. And I wrote a note in here about this. The word yakad. You have yakad on your notes too?
I have it somewhere, not there. I have the Greek there.
And which speaks about to burn. And kad itself means, it means on down the head, or on top, burn the head. It means burn the head, or on top of the head. I can't read my writing there, but
I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah. So when you put yakad together, it means heat that comes from the top of the head. And okay.
I want you to hold your thought, because I want you to go from there. You've heard me teach, and others teach many times, that the head is what's supposed to lead us, which is drawn from the spirit, and the heel represents the nefesh. The flesh is what leads us. So burning that fire from the top of the head, the spirit, the ruach, being led by the spirit. Anyway, okay.
Now that's good though. But it's really true, because when we think about how you were talking about the fire, who starts the fire? The Ruach HaKodesh. I mean, you think about the fire on the altar. Yah sent the fire upon the altar, because we know what happened is it Leviticus 8 or something, where they bring the wrong fire to the altar, that there was death. But it's the spirit of Yah that brings that fire upon us. It's the spirit of Yah that pours out upon us. And then I really like that then it's our responsibility to make sure the fire never goes out. It's our responsibility to keep it going.
Well, and that goes back to that 1 Timothy 1:6-7, because if you look there where it says to stir up the fire, the word here is to stir up is anozapurio, which means to kindle anew, rekindle, resuscitate, in the context of a fire.
Okay.
And that's why I think it's very important. How do we do that?
Well, we stir up the spirit. So when we stir up the gifts within us, that kindling.
The kindling. But we've also got to remember the whole of Scripture is given to us to stir us up, because it's the truth, and it's the testimony of a witness. It's a witness to who Yah is. How can you read what he's done for others and not get excited, since he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Those things that he's done before, he will do again if we will but stand. If we stand with the armor, with our full armor, that priestly garb completely upon us, and we stand with his word in our mouth. And here's the next thing: we shift the atmosphere by giving him praise. And the best way to do that is, man, worship. Have worship going on all the time. Worship, it changes your heart. And then also stop looking at yourself and your circumstances. You begin to give out to others, and all those things begin to stir up that fire. And it's actually the command. That's what we're supposed to do, is because we're supposed to be on the altar.
I was thinking about this. The worship is there, and I'm also thinking about when we talk about the gifts, of the Holy Spirit, the gifts of the Ruach HaKodesh, and how they are operating, they're working within our lives. What's the purpose of the gifts? The gifts are about others. It's not for us, it's for others. And when it says stir up, what does it say there in 1 Timothy? Stir up the gift of God, stir up the gift which is in you. And so the purpose is not to be held within, because I think if you start to hold it in, it suffocates the fire. But if we begin to release it, and this is where I have such a big concern, is that, what are we doing? If the Messianic, the Hebrew roots community is not stirring up the fire within our groups, our congregations, our assemblies, and it's not spreading, then it's suffocating. And what happens when we're suffocating in the fire is that this whole thing is going to die out. And one of the things that that it's not suffocating is having a really healthy fellowship, a congregation of all generations, and I think we're all trying to figure that out, and we're still working. There's some that are excelling in that, and some we're like, okay, Father, works in progress, because we're listening. Say, Father, show us how to walk through this thing. Stir this up within us. Stir it up in our hearts. Yeah. That's right.
What's that song? Oh, it's Consuming Fire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. And if you don't have a full fire, what do you get? You get half-baked bread. It's true. Or you get raw meat. Right? If you don't have have you ever tried, in other words, have you ever had the propane start to go out on the gas grill? What does that do to your steak or your chicken? How long does it take to cook it? Well, it won't cook. It just won't cook. And nobody's going to eat off of that. Right? No, but seriously, think about that.
Well, I think there's somebody in the house.
We got somebody in the house. James, are you there with us?
James is in the house.
Or
maybe he's not quite in yet.
Right? Still adjusting things there, getting things connected.
Well, soon and very soon we'll see James.
Yeah. Or I was going to say, soon and very soon we are going to see the King. We got King James with us.
You can't see me.
Whoa. Check it out. James, what happened? We got the fuzz. What happened? The big fuzz.
Did it get too big? You're muted.
Oh.
One infected hair and it ruined the whole thing.
One infected hair?
Yeah. I kept plucking the hair and it was a bald spot and it went bigger and bigger. Oh, ruined my beard. But my wife's happy. She hated it. Makes me feel better. Like if I go to a gas station, I dip, and I know that's bad for you. But they never ID me, and like anybody else comes in, they ID them.
Right.
It had to be. And then yesterday I got ID'd for the first time in about 2 years. So.
Well, I want you to know that when I do shave this off, I do look 10 years younger, but they'll still card me.
No, I will say this: when John had his beard before he trimmed it down a little bit, I hated it. He looked like this big bushman, and now he trims a little bit. I like it.
Yeah, I need to trim it now.
I'm not. I'm talking when it was like this big. Your face was like 4 inches wider.
You take it and you comb it backwards.
You're weird.
And then it really
Like
looks
a
like,
fluff all up.
that's right. Yeah, it kind of looks like a cat in a fight.
Mm. Some that just put their hand in an electrical socket.
That's right. See, I used to be able to do that with my hair, but that's another story. Hey, so well, Sandi, that was really good for the Torah portion. We appreciate that. Let's stir up the fire. Stir it up. Stir it up, Father. And we have a responsibility as kings and priests to keep that fire going, keep it burning, and make sure we're getting the fire from the right place. So, all right. So, hey, I want to bring to you all in this next segment, and this is a current event. Now, this article that I have actually dates back to April 5th, 2012, but it's pretty much one of these things that is still a current event because we're dealing with this every day. We're seeing it. And
so it's still news.
It's still news. Absolutely. Even though this article dates back to then, it is very current. And it's actually called, the name of the title is, of the article is The Demoralization in America, the Separation of Means and Ends. And this comes from conservativedailynews.com. And so basically what this is talking about is the demoralization of a nation, and how does that take place, and what's that about? Now, I on a Shabbat service a few weeks back, I was talking about Mr. I think his name is Bezanov, who actually broke it down about what demoralization is. Now, first off, we first think about demoralization as, well, kind of like the morals of our culture just, taking a nosedive. And, we're seeing all sorts of stuff in terms of what's being promoted in our culture, what's being promoted in Hollywood and Nashville, and, from the music scene, from the movie scene, from even from Congress and what's being passed, bill signed into signed by past presidents that lead to these things. And when we as believers are actually looking at things that are taking place, a lot of times they can affect our attitude, and it can be very disconcerting. But why is this taking place? Why is this happening? And what is the purpose behind it? Well, the whole there's some things that we see. Let's talk about the whole thing about where we had actually healed from the racial tensions from the 50s and the 60s, and in the 70s and the 80s, we had a healing process take place. I've talked about some of the concepts there, and how the return to racial problems within our nation are being promoted once again within the mainstream media, among people that have voices, that have been given platforms to speak about it, those that are celebrities and Congress people, and constantly a barrage about how racist and how divided a nation we are, and how all these problems are, when in reality, when people are living together, people are walking together in our culture, we actually don't, we don't actually see a lot, not like what they're talking about. But a lot of the times with the promotion of racism, it is by the mere fact that they continue to put it in our face, and we emphasize even things that are not even true, as if they were true. In fact, there was one show that I was watching, they were talking about how white supremacists were having all these rallies and all these different things. And, honestly, they're not in the news. These things aren't taking place. But in the TV show, they sure were. The movies, they sure are. But what is it? It's to give an image, and it leads to a social breakdown where this radical minority promotes these things. They've got the platform, they've got the voice, they have these things, and it's to promote a leftward political agenda. I mean, think about what happened in this week over in this this last few days in New Zealand with the slaughtering of these Muslims in the mosque in New Zealand. They don't talk about the slaughtering of Christians that happens every week, where they're raided by Muslim groups and destroying churches and families and killing and blowing up bombs and tearing them apart. But this one made the media. Why? Because it is part of an agenda, a leftward political agenda, where a lot of us say, this is horrible. We're demoralized. We need change. And the change is always taken and pushing the Overton, what they call the Overton window. And if you have a spectrum of left to right, that Overton window is basically where we live. And if the left can pull it more to the left, the right will compromise and go more to the left. And it'll always shift. Whoever has the strongest voice, whoever's the loudest voice, whoever has the bully pulpit, so to speak, will push it in that direction. And that's where the left has been. President Trump has been a destabilizer and has really been an anchor, pushing it too far to the left. But even still, we can see that happen. We can see those things happening on the border with the immigration issues here in this nation, where literally thousands are still coming across the border every day. They're not stopping these migrant caravans that are coming across. Why? And then they're saying that these people are victims. They need our aid, and the whole opening up of a social system, of an infrastructure to support them, which takes away from supporting our veterans and those that are in need and those that are poor within our own actually American citizens that need help, because it's all being shifted that direction, because that is all part of a left-leaning dilemma about the demoralization of our nation. Now, we've talked about here on Walking in Spirit and Truth. I'm not here Walking in Spirit, but in Saul Alinsky's, in Let Us Reason Together, we've talked about Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. We haven't talked about Rebel for radicals, but these are two books that are very much influential in the lives of America's top leadership, like Barack Obama in the last 8 years, Hillary Clinton. We would have had even more of that. We've had a little stay by not having Hillary around, but these are even the guidebooks that they use about the demoralization of our nation. Now, where does it come from? It came from communist Russia, and that they knew how to break down our culture by implementing several different strategies. And I don't have all the strategies in front of me. I don't have them memorized. But one of the big ones was the demoralization. It's the shifting of an education system. It's a shifting of even religion in Christianity, where Christianity has been targeted, and where the whole elements of social justice, where it's the emphasis upon needing to take care of those that are in need, and defending liberty and protecting individual rights. But it's the push of those moral issues to a socialist or leftist leaning result, saying government needs to play a role, and removing the voice of religion. In fact, in many churches that are leaning left, and we see that shift even among the Southern Baptists, among other, not just to single them out, but many of the mainline denominations, where they are receiving money now from George Soros groups that are paying off buildings, paying off ministry debts, that type of thing, as long as they will open up shelters, for example, that encourages even more illegal immigration. These are things that are affecting our culture, literally taking us down a road that's going to bring us to, that's making us look more like the former Soviet Union than what we know as a constitutional republic here in the United States, removing it from the public stage of debate, and then removing our ability to speak about these things and push back using our free speech. These all are all things that we are facing right now in in our culture, all for the reason for the public interest supersedes private interests, and removing of our rights in order to give things to others. So rights to minorities, where we all lose our equal standing under the Constitution. So, but these are things, when you see things on the news and you just get upset about it, and it makes you, it takes away our it demoralizes us. I mean, essentially, that's what it takes. When we see that, and we see that constantly pounded before us, this is all part of actually a process to shift the way we think, to cause us to cry out and say, we've got to have a solution. And so I want to bring that to the table and hear what you guys are thinking about that. Sandi, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have no idea what to think, because we've talked about it so much, and that you pretty much said everything, except we've got to continue to do what we do, and we've got to work the system that we have, and we've got to be on our knees. How else do we fight this giant? It's Goliath. Well, we stand and have faith. We go out and we battle and know that the victory is Yah's, and we're simply the vessel. And we dispel the lies with truth. We've got to use our voice. We've got to stop also feeding the mechanism. Folks, turn off the news. Turn off the media. Stop feeding them. Stop giving them your money. Stop feeding the lies.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, don't support their sponsors.
Don't support. Absolutely. And write them saying, I will not support, write the sponsor and say, as long as you are supporting this, whatever, I'm not going to support you. Because if there's anything we've learned, when you contact and use your voice, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And we, unfortunately, as Yah's people, say, I just don't have, we have many excuses, but the bottom line is you're too lazy and you don't want to do it.
So, think about this. So this thing that happened in New Zealand, immediately CNN starts coming out and they start promoting their agenda, which is, well, it's extreme.
It's Christian thing.
It's extreme rights and it's all that. But if you look at the guy's manifesto, he's very much left. And they also start blaming President Trump. And so if they're going to promote lies like that, this guy had nothing to do. President have nothing to do with it. But when we hear those type of lies, but if we keep watching it, or if we don't write the sponsors and say, this is ridiculous, the stuff that you guys are sponsoring to push this type of garbage, then we're going to continue to get it if those guys don't pull their ads. And I'm talking about, where's the majority of the funding for most news come from? We're looking at pharmaceuticals and car manufacturers. Think about how many ads we see, even if they're local sponsors that pop up on these.
Write them.
Then
call. Take some time.
Say, hey,
do it.
We're not going to support your dealership and buy our cars from you if you keep putting your news and you don't tell your people your commercials on these news stations. And I think it's really important, and especially if our local news stations are repeating the same things that the national news.
Oh, they all are, and we need to. Oh.
So there's certain things that we can certainly do, but to even think about. So I've been writing President Trump at whitehouse.gov, and I ended up getting text messages.
You actually have influence now.
Yeah, and I actually got a text about when they passed the Senate bill condemning. Condemning President Trump's. And actually, it went to the House and passed the House and went to the Senate, passed the Senate. Saying that this national security issue is not a national security issue. And President Trump says, well, he sent me a text. Well, he didn't, but it was a mass text, I'm sure. And, how do you vote? Do you want me to veto it or not? And I said, veto.
Veto.
And so we see it was later on that day that President Trump signed the veto. They don't need to be demoralized by all of the publicity this stuff said. He has every legal right to do what he needs to do, because that's certainly a national emergency going on. And yet the news is saying it isn't. But we take action. We can do something about it. James, what are your thoughts about these things?
Man, there's a lot to this. this communist takeover has been going on for a long, long time. Whenever back, I think it was 1913, J.P. Morgan bought out all the banks, and that was to start the indoctrination process. Adam Weishaupt, he's the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati. You could actually go to the Library of Congress and find a letter where George Washington was being accused of basically doing stuff in the Freemasons group and his group, and he actually goes and says, "Look, I haven't been to my Freemason group for over 30 years or something," but he said John Adams and his crew, they're doing some wild stuff. But so we see this stuff, all this stuff going on, and it was, I mean, literally America was founded on the principle that we didn't want a dictatorship. We came here on many came here for the principle that they wanted to establish a country that you were free to be a human being with your own rights, and to basically, how do I say it? We were called not to be slaves, but we wanted to be free. And what happens is that we continue every time they go and they have a terrorist attack. Every time something goes and we get scared a little bit, we toss them a little bit of our freedom. When we just continue to do that, and we say, okay, we'll give up this freedom for some security. And what happens is eventually you run out of freedom and you're enslaved. Lastly, if you go back and you look, I truly believe groups like Stalin and Hitler, they were practice runs for what's going to happen in the end. They were the first time to see if it would actually work. If you actually go right now and look, the United Nations is using Chicago as a practice town to practice their whatever the heck United Nations does. But it is actually the United Nations in Chicago, and they are actually using the college actually has classes that they teach for that. So, and it all has to do with this global government where they want us to be one world. Rockefeller, he is not shy about telling you that they are going to have a one world government, a one world system. There's going to be no borders. So we're not going to have to worry about the, what's going on at the border, because there won't be any. But it's because we continue to be quiet. We continue to sit back and allow us to say, you know what? It's not happening to me today. I'm going to keep my head in the sand. As you see, I'm kind of passionate about this, but there's been a lot of people who gave up their lives for this country and for the freedoms that we have that sometimes we just take really for granted.
Yeah, James, I agree. I agree with you, because the whole issue is I think what they're trying to do is to silence our voice, and then of course, if we hold the attitude of escapism, for example, and I've talked about this before, the escapism principle that it's handed down from the rapture mentality. And I know many of us don't believe in a pre-tribulation rapture as talked about in churchianity,
or the rapture,
or the rapture, that type of thing. And we're looking forward to an exodus or a greater exodus and that type of thing. But with a mentality, it says, we're going to be exiting then, and it's supposed to be this way. And if we try to say anything, are we hindering the ushering in of Messiah? And don't we want to usher in the time of Messiah? But that's not our choice, because if we're wrong about the timing of things, then we have a responsibility to our children and our grandchildren. And so I think when we wrap this up and we're looking at how the left is willing to falsely accuse people of racism, they're stirring up race riots, where they can bully and silence any ideological opponents. Ultimately, we understand that we are in a war. We're actually in a civil war in this nation. It's not become violent in the streets where we see divided sides as in the first Civil War, but we actually see how this is very, very real, very, very real. And these elements actually hit us close to the heart, where we can actually become very passionate about it. I mean, that I'm very passionate about this stuff by bringing it to light, but understanding that we shouldn't fear the fact that Big Brother may come down on us for speaking out, but we need to be able to be a people that will open up our mouths, that will be able to speak, that will contact our congressmen, whether it's state, whether it's federal, whether it's even getting involved in our local school boards and city boards, whatever, to be a voice and not be silenced in order to stop this leftward swing. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Some things to be thinking about in regards to this thing called demoralization, and recognize it, and then take action. Do something about it. And so there we go.
All right. So now it's time for the Haftarah.
We're ready for our next segment. So James, you've got the Haftarah for us today. And what have you got for us?
We'll just talk for a second.
Just talk for a second. Well,
not about the news article, because you get carried away,
Oh.
and we'll end up by the whole mother.
What?
Yeah.
Real quick, I know it's Matthew 9. What was it? I'm trying to find the. I know what I was.
Well, we
about.
we had on the list that I sent, and there's so many different versions in the Brit Hot Show. We had Matthew 17, 9 through 13.
That's what it was. Matthew 17, 9 through 13. Got it. All right. So Matthew 17, 9 through 13. Here we go. All right. So it says, and they came down from the mountain. Yeshua charged them, saying, "Tell the vision to no man until the Son of Man has been risen again from the dead." And his disciples asked him, saying, "Why then," says the scribes, "why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come?" And Yeshua answered and said unto them, Elijah truly shall first come and restore all things. But I say unto you that Elijah is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto them whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood what they spoke unto them, and basically John of John the Baptist. And you said it was through what now?
That was it, through 13.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we see this, again, they're talking about, hey, the prophets and the scribes had basically prophesied that Elijah was going to come. And if actually knew, they said on Passover, I think it is, and I'm not 100% sure, you guys maybe know better than me, they actually save a seat at the dinner table open for Elijah to come. So at this point, the Jews were preparing for Elijah to come first. Another interesting topic here is that we see that he's going to be raised up on the third day. And he tells the disciples to tell no one until this has happened. The thing I thought was probably the most awesome, and it's something that happens as we grow in our faith, is if you look here, they didn't understand what he was talking about at first, right? And then it says, at the end, it says, likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood that he spoke unto them of John the Baptist, or Yochanan the Immerser. How today, for me, I know that Yahweh opens my eyes to understand his word like I've never understood it before. I can remember growing up thinking that it just was so confusing, the Bible. But if we allow him to be our teacher, we allow him to be our rabbi, we allow him to instruct us in all righteousness, he will basically, not only will he teach you what it says and how to comprehend it, and he will actually make it your passion. He'll make it your love. He'll make him your first love. But you got to allow him to do the work. Allow him to help you to cross over so that you follow him. Another thing too is you see here, and you got John. He says that basically they realized that it was Yochanan the Immerser who was the Elijah, and that's who I truly believe that's who we are called to be in these days. We're called to be people, a remnant of believers who will prepare the way for our soon coming Messiah. And what that means is that we're not afraid to point out sin, because if we remember, Yochanan was actually had his head cut off because he pointed out sin of Herod cheating on his wife. It was Herod, Pilate cheating on his wife, I think it was. One of them.
It was Herod. Yeah, it was Herod.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so we have to be willing to point out the sin be set apart from the sin, be set apart from the world. But we are called to prepare the way for our Messiah.
That's really true. That's really good. I think about that whole concept. It was Yochanan the Immerser. It was John the Baptist. It was he that was the voice calling in the wilderness. He was the one that was preparing the way. Why? Because he was the rightful high priest. And so therefore, since it was such a political thing, and all the priesthood was elected in the temple at the time, he was the one calling the wilderness, calling people to the kingdom and into the kingdom. And it was that preparation that we see. But we see over in Malachi chapter 4, we also know that it's in verse 4, remember the law of Moses, or the Torah of Moses, my servant, even the statutes and ordinances which I commanded him in Horeb for all Israel. Behold, I'm going to send you, Elijah the prophet, before the coming of the great and terrible day of Yahweh, and he will restore, there's that restoration, the hearts of the fathers to their children, the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the land with a curse. And there we see part of what they're talking about is they're looking for that restoration. And what are we looking for right now? Are we not looking for the restoration of all things, to see the fulfillment of that promise? But see, even as Yochanan the Immerser, even as he was sent as a forerunner before Yeshua, isn't that same spirit going on today? Isn't that the same spirit of restoration, that same voice that's calling out in the wilderness? I mean, where are the 12 tribes of Israel scattered right now? They're scattered to the four corners of the earth, which is the wilderness. We're scattered everywhere, and we're looking for that great and terrible day of the Lord, is what my version says here. But that awesome day, that day when Yah returns, yeah, there's going to be a shakeup. Yeah, there's going to be things that are taking place, but the voice comes first. The voice of Yochanan the Immerser. I think every one of us that's in Hebrew roots, Messianic, in this realm of this community, is calling forth the same message of Elijah. Restore all things. Restore the Torah. Restore in fact, as it says, remember the Torah of Moses, my servant, even the statutes and ordinances which I commanded him in Horeb. What are those things? It's the Torah. It's the first 5 books of the Bible where everything else is founded upon. Everything is hinged upon. And everything, it's that very message that is that the very Besserah, the good news of what was given to Abraham that would ultimately be fulfilled in Yeshua. That is the message that we're bringing here. It is that restoration. Sandy.
Well, I'm referring back to what James was saying. He started off with talking about the cup of Passover and Elijah. And we know that after, when Yeshua was here walking the earth, he had that discussion with his disciples about Elijah. And he said, he made it really clear that Elijah had already come. And we've got to remember that he came in spirit and power through Yochanan, through John the Baptist, through Yochanan the Immerser, because he was filled with that spirit and power that Elijah walked in. The same Ruach in him was in Elijah, right? And vice versa. But Yeshua also referred, he was talking about the future coming. And we see that in Matthew 17, 9 through 13. As they were coming down from the mountain, Yeshua commanded them, tell them the vision. And it goes on to say, the disciples understood that he had spoken to them about John the Baptist, but he's also speaking about something that's going to happen. And then we think of the tradition of the 5th cup at Passover, that 5th cup, that's really the expectation of Messiah coming. Then this goes to what you're saying, because we are living in that day and that hour. There will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and the earth dismay among nations, and perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves, men fainting from fear and the expectation of the things which are coming in the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the cloud with power and great glory. But when these things begin to take place, straighten up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws nigh. this is the day and the hour, folks. We're seeing these things begin to happen. We're seeing society completely run amok, but it's all looking towards our Messiah coming in power and glory, coming to gather his people. And yes, Elijah walked in the spirit of power and authority, but that same spirit is in you and I. In this day and this hour, we should see those very things. We should be the ones saying, prepare ye the way. The son of man, Yeshua HaMashiach, is coming as a lion. I can hear the rhythm of the Lion of the tribe of Judah who is on his way.
Yes. And you think about that same spirit that Elijah had, that same spirit that Yah is releasing in the world today, that which many of us have experienced in terms of a fire and a passion for the Torah and the restoration of those things. And because it's everything about Yeshua, everything about him. But think about the culture that they had going on in the day. I mean, tying this back to our current event piece, the culture of the day. And I'm glad you used this portion, James, because to bring as a talking point, because it does relate to the article that I brought. And that has to do with that. I mean, they had King Herod and their stuff that was going on there, the corruption in the politics, the Romans that were there, the corruptions even within the temple. I mean, Yeshua even was overturning the tables because of the thievery and the sheer greed that was happening at the temple. All of these things they're saying and demoralize, where the people that wanted righteousness, the people that wanted a shift, the people that wanted change, and then a leader that raises up and they say, we recognize Yochanan the Immerser. We recognize him in the position that he held and the authority that he speaks from, and then they see him beheaded. I mean, the demoralization of a culture to be under the control of a political religious system and a political ideology of the Romans that are suppressing truth, free speech, their rights. I mean, we see even what was his name? Barabbas, who was supposed to be almost looking like an identical twin of Yeshua. That when we talk about the two different goats that are brought during the Day of Atonement, where they look alike, and one is the scapegoat and the other one is slaughtered. When we look at all of those different pieces and how the people were looking to Yeshua and now they were wanting to crucify him, and how demoralizing that would have been, the one that they put their hope in. It scattered the disciples. Only one was left, and that was Yochanan, the disciple who was with Mary, Yeshua's mother, and Mary Magdalene, as they watched Yeshua die on the cross, die on that tree. When they saw that, think about the demoralization. And yet these are all things that if the pattern continues, we'll see the demoralization, but in fact, it's the fire that we are responsible for, as Sandi was talking about. It was that fire that we're supposed to keep burning, that we're supposed to continue to kindle and keep going. And so those are the responsibilities. I just see every one of these, the Torah portion, the Haftarah, this current event type of thing. So these are all different things that we've got to look at as needing to pay attention to as the day and the hour that we're living in. I think it's one of the signs, but for us to stay strong in the Lord and the power. And we encourage one another. In fact, Sandi brought a message that on Shabbat that spoke about the purpose of the ecclesia, the purpose of the assembly of ourselves together, is to encourage one another, and all the more as we see that day drawing near. In fact, that's why we gather. If we're not gathered, we're being scattered. It's important that we need to gather and not divide, and that it's important that we come together so that we can be encouraged. So, James, do you have any last words on this?
if I can hit this button.
There you go.
You know, I think we're living in times that not many people have ever lived in before. You know, we have to be in prayer constantly. It's just it's a constant thing. The thing is that we're going through these feast days and we're learning about all the feasts and all the sacrifices and the offerings, and we're learning all this stuff. The point of it was that we are a forgetful people. We are a people who constantly forget that God is that forget about our relationship with Him a lot of times. Well, these things were set up to be as a reminder, and as people, we need those reminders. And I constantly believe that we got to keep Him on the forefront of our minds constantly, especially as the times get worse and things get, more and more hectic. But we've got to be prayed up and just staying in His Word. And the cool thing is, there's nothing to fear because we have an Elohim who's already won this battle. We just gotta choose sides.
That's right. You know what? I think that's good, James. That's just really appropriate. Choose what side. Choose this day whom we will serve. As for me and my house, we shall serve Yahweh.
Amen.
That's the good way to decide what we're going to do. And by the way, serving Yahweh means that we don't just stay silent and stay in our homes. When we actually, if we're living in a culture that allows us to have freedom of speech still and to be able to present our views, then we need to take advantage of that and use whatever platform we have. So, well, hey, that pretty much is bringing us to a close and to wrap it up for today. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that's been joining us here on Let Us Reason Together in the Monday edition. And give us a thumbs up if you like what you hear today. Pass it on in social media. Get the word out so that people can be informed and they can stay grounded in the Word. That's hopefully we're grounding you, and hopefully we're putting a fire. Just talking about that Torah portion, putting a fire in your heart to continue and press on in your walking relationship with Yah and living it out every day. Let those gifts be stirred up within you, as Sandy was saying earlier. So remind you, tomorrow's edition of Let Us Reason Together, called The Chameleon Church, will be on with the host, Alan Guire. So we don't want you to miss out on that. And my thanks to James. James, thank you for joining us this morning. I certainly appreciate it. And Sandy, thank you so much for bringing the Torah portion for us today. Sure appreciate that as well. And so until next time, I have to say, shalom.